Zambian, my dear fellow Zambian citizens, compatriots, and the Zambian proletariat, I now wish to proceed to discuss the remaining articles of our party's Declaration of Principles. Article 10, the economic regime and the responsibility of the state. All economic activity is the fruit of man's common labor. Therefore, the whole economic process must be viewed and carried out in accordance with it and their nature or way of life. Men should not become slaves of what they themselves have produced or initiated. The economic regime should avail or give all individuals and all peoples the real possibility of self-development, assuring them of a steady and rapid rise in their standard of living. Thus, work, like all economic activity, must contribute to the establishment of a more just and humane society and be the true expression and measure for true solidarity between all men. Social, political, and economic regimes that are based on private or public monopoly of the economy or on dominant minorities who reserve for themselves absolute power to make social, economic, and political decisions affecting the whole community must be opposed, fought, and replaced. Consequently, the Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, condemn and reject all forms of unbridled capitalism as well as Marxist state socialism because both systems prevent the attainment of a humane economic system. The state, therefore, must recognize and respect the various roles of groups of people and the communities that make up society in general. The state must guide and coordinate all economic activities in accordance with a popular plan that has been drawn up with these groups and communities. Plans must be ratified by their representative political institutions to ensure speedier development, guarantees for a stable policy of full employment, and a higher standard of living for the people. Article 11, sharing the world resources. The Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, submits that all individuals and all peoples of the earth have the right to equitably benefit from all the resources of the earth and from all that is produced by human activities. This principle of universal destination and distribution of goods or products remains valid, whatever form of ownership or structure of society may take. It confirms ownership as having both a personal and a social character, and by virtue of this basic and fundamental right to use the world's resources, every individual and therefore every worker has the right to own goods or products that are necessary for his existence and that of his family, and needed for the exercise of his freedom and responsibility. It is right, therefore, to promote the workers' access to this type of property, which may take various forms and is to be thought of as an extension of human freedom. The ownership of the means of production, which endows the holders with increasing and often excessive power over men and society, must be subject to the requirements of the ever-growing social and economic needs of this type of property by the people. This is why the rights attached to private means of production may legitimately be limited and must be subject to appropriate control by the public authorities whenever it is necessary to safeguard national interests. These rights must be transferred to the nation itself. In this aspect, we're talking about nationalization. In countries where large areas of rural land are concentrated in the hands of a few individuals, the public authorities must put an end to this injustice by proceeding with a redistribution of land which benefits the rural population. Article 12. Socialization. By his very nature, man is and must be the principle, the originator, and the purpose, not only for all economic activity, but more generally of all institutions, which must therefore be directed towards the good of all the people, and must not be relegated to the order of things. To safeguard personal value in a society characterized by a continuous advance of science and technology and increasing interaction and interdependence of men and organizations, it is necessary to overcome and eliminate the excessive influence of the technocracy by ensuring that basic groups, communities, and organizations assume responsibilities and take specific action that will prove in the final analysis that man remains supreme and master of his own life and that of the whole community. Article 13. Democracy. Every man, every family, and every other basic group belongs to a wider community or group leading up to the nation, regional communities of groupings, and finally the world community of peoples. Nations as well as international, regional, and world institutions must set themselves the objective of achieving cooperatively, or together that is, the political, economic, social, cultural conditions that enable each and everyone to lead a genuine human existence and fully develop their personality. These objectives imply that the groups, and particularly those of the workers, possess the real possibility of taking an active part in defining and executing the policies pursued by these various national and international institutions. The Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, affirms the right of the peoples to rule themselves, establish their own system of government, draw up plans of social, economic, and cultural development, and to live in complete freedom, subject to the basic demands of democracy. Article 14. Solidarity and justice between peoples. The Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, rejects all colonial and neo-colonial systems and all forms of imperialism and exploitation of one people by another, or one group by another, or one social class by another. Justice and solidarity must form the basis of relations between the various social groups and peoples, so that those nations tending to be more prosperous, more just, and humane together form a single community in which all people will receive an increasingly fair and equal share in general prosperity. The Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, considers that this solidarity should find expression in the effective cooperation between nations for the development of the world's resources and other economic possibilities or potential, so that in accordance with demands of international justice, the combined efforts of all may put to an end the growing and intolerable inequality between the technically developed countries and the underdeveloped or developing countries, which are slipping further and further, deeper and deeper into poverty. The development of mankind in solidarity will demand real sacrifices and structural changes on the part of the affluent countries, and of course, sacrifices and efforts at discipline, transformation, and organization on the part of the developing nations. Furthermore, it is essential to create international agencies capable of coping with the task befallen on the world community of peoples. The workers' organizations, both in the industrialized countries and the developing world, should establish closer cooperation among themselves in order to be able to influence policies of their countries, especially on production, trade, and elaboration of other developmental programs. This should lead to the elimination of current inequalities and enhance fair distribution among all people of the benefits arising from technical and economic progress. Article 15, Peace. In the face of the growing inequalities and conflicts that rend and tear the world apart, and the threat of destruction of humanity by nuclear arms, the Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, submits that the demands for justice, non-compliance or boycotts, brotherhood, and peace become more vital and precious for all the people on the globe. Active and constructive coexistence in peace and cooperation among all peoples of the world must be organized and guaranteed by a comprehensive and tough code of international law, whose implementation and preservation must be entrusted to institutions capable of promoting and enforcing the rules needed. Peace is the fruit of justice, and for this to be achieved and assured, all mankind must progress to a standard of living which recognizes and respects human dignity and guarantees a world where there is fair distribution of economic resources. The Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, rejects war as a means for settling local and international disputes. It is, however, convinced that peace is more than the absence of war or a mere balance of power, and that it cannot be assured by political domination. Peace must be preserved by a social order strongly supported by institutions that enable individuals and all peoples to live and enjoy an equitable and more satisfactory level of justice. The Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, supports efforts to restore and strengthen peace. Therefore, it supports every initiative that favors a general and controlled simultaneous disarmament and the strengthening of the means of action for preserving peace by the appropriate international organizations. It is convinced in the fact that the existence and development of international law, as well as the establishment of an international security force, for use by the United Nations, African Union, are suitable and necessary instruments for preserving all wars of whatever nature. Article 16. The revolutionary duty of the Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives. The Progressive Labour Congress, P.L.C., the Progressives, are convinced that the application of the principles set forth in our Declaration of Principles will bring about the conditions necessary for the complete liberation of man, the workers and their organizations, the proletariat and allied strata, and the Zambians as a whole, which will lead to a radical transformation of our society. Consequently, the labor movement must be the revolutionary force working for the transformation of the concepts of and structures of our society in line with the principles in this declaration. Article 17. Appeal to the Zambians, the workers, and the Zambian proletariat at large. Convinced that the efforts of all men, and we are using this in the general gender-neutral usage, are needed for universal progress, the well-being of all the Zambian citizens, the workers and their organizations, the women, students and youths, the cooperative movements, and the proletariat at large. The Progressive Labour Congress, the Progressives, appeals to these groups without any distinction whatsoever to join the party, embrace the party, own the party, individually and severally, to bring about in Zambia a workers' revolution, of course, through the use of the ballot box, so that we may reclaim our rightful position, our dignity, our freedom and justice by establishing in Zambia a humane and national state that promotes and defends the common good. May God bless Zambia. Long live the Zambian workers. Long live the Zambian proletariat. Thank you very much.